pray to you this evening for strength, courage, and guidance to share your story. Direct my words and help me speak clearly. Help others see the similarities versus the differences. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So January 2025 marked 9 years since I survived a cardioembolic stroke. That left me with some challenges with speech, memory, and word formation. I stand here today as living proof of God's sustaining power and healing presence. So if I stumble a little, thank you in advance for your patience. The real miracle isn't that I survived a stroke, it's that I'm standing at all. I am a survivor of deep childhood trauma, years of sexual, physical, emotional abuse. I walked through seasons of abandonment, neglect, paralyzing fear, and the darkness of suicidal thoughts. My heart knew isolation and depression all too well, and for a long time I tried to numb the pain with alcohol. But even in my brokenness, God never left my side. From the ashes of addiction and trauma, Jesus led me into the light of recovery. I'm healing from complex PTSD, codependency, anxiety, mental and emotional battles that once held me captive. This isn't about what I've done, it's about what God has done in me. If you hear one thing tonight, let it be this. No matter how broken your story feels, there is hope. God restores and redeems, and he makes all things new. He did it for me, he can do it for you. I celebrate victory and continuous sobriety and freedom, coming up on 6 years from addiction to alcohol, as well as suicidal ideation. And my name is Shrrene.
Hi, Shrrene.
My childhood was marked by pain no child should ever have to endure. I was surrounded by brokenness, substance abuse, and violence. These were not just occasional shadows in my life. They were the very fabric woven into the very fabric of my upbringing. In the darkest parts of my story, God began writing redemption. The pain meant to destroy me because of the soil where healing took, I'm already getting tongue-tied. The soil where healing, hold on. It's all better. In the darkest parts of my story, God began writing redemption. The pain meant to destroy me became the soil where healing took root. What the enemy meant for harm, God is using for good. I don't share this for sympathy, but to show you the power of his grace. My past doesn't define me, God does. And with him, even the most broken beginnings can lead to hope. At 4 years old, we lived above a liquor store in Stockton, California. Chaos, fear, and instability were my everyday reality. My mom was usually drunk and high, and her body was broken and bruised. She would send me downstairs with a note and money for her cigarettes and booze, and no one ever questioned it. I'd buy a Dr. Pepper and candy with the change, and that small moment of sweetness felt like the only bit of control I had. My mom would let me sip her drinks, and I remember liking how it made me feel. That was just the beginning of my relationship with numbing that would follow me for years. I didn't have words for trauma, addiction, or dysfunction yet. I only knew that the world didn't feel safe and that sometimes alcohol made it feel a little less scary. My mom was battling her own demons. She was an alcoholic, an addict, and a working prostitute. Our home was never safe, and abuse became my normal. I learned early on to be invisible, believing that I didn't matter. The first 5 years of my life were filled with constant instability. We slept in shelters, on the streets, or at the mercy of strangers. We never stayed anywhere long enough to feel safe. I don't have memories of bedtime stories or comfort. I just remember survival. But even then, God was there. I didn't know him yet, but he was holding me through it all. I shouldn't have survived, but by his grace I did. My life forever changed one day in kindergarten. I was just a little girl playing on the monkey bars when my shirt lifted, revealing the bruises on my back and stomach. My teachers saw what no child should have to carry. Within the hour, police arrived and quietly took me away. I never went home again. At the station, they took pictures and asked questions. I said what I had been taught to say, that I just fell down. I was too scared to tell the truth, but it didn't matter because God was already making a way out. I entered foster care and spent 8 months in an orphanage. My mom came a few times, usually drunk, promising to bring me home, but deep down, I knew she wouldn't. What felt like abandonment was actually God's rescue plan. Even then, he was already rewriting my story. I remember spending Christmas there when I was 5 at the orphanage, and I got a single present that was wrapped. I couldn't remember ever having received a wrapped present before. It was small, but to me it felt like a miracle. As time passed and other kids left, I started to believe I was too broken, too dirty, and too damaged to be wanted. At just 5 years old, I was already thinking about death, just wanting the pain to stop. I didn't know God, but I cried in my little heart, why doesn't anyone want me? Why am I alive? Even then, he was there. What felt like abandonment was really the beginning of my rescue. This wasn't the end, it was the start of a redemption story that only God could write. I arrived at a small home in Lodi, California, where a couple and their 2 sons welcomed me. It wasn't fancy, but to me it felt like maybe it could be safe. My birth mom visited me twice. The last time was on my 6th birthday. She had brought me a gift and told me she loved me and left. I didn't see her again until I was 18. I spent years wondering why I wasn't worth staying for. Then from the age of 6 to 12, I was being sexually abused by my older foster brother. When I finally told the school counselor in 5th grade, my foster mom brushed it off. This needs to stop, and your dad doesn't need to know about this. My dad passed away 3 years ago, and we never spoke of it. But even then, God was still with me, holding me, protecting pieces of me that I didn't know were worth saving. What others tried to bury, he's now using to bring healing, and this is the power of redemption. During the abuse, I often asked, where is this God that everyone talks about? Why is this happening to me? Excuse me, I'm thirsty. I get really thirsty doing this. I didn't want to wake up, and death felt like it would be a relief. I was battling depression, and no one saw it. I hurt constantly, but stayed silent. When my foster mom ignored the abuse, I eventually said, if you don't stop, I'll tell Dad. It didn't stop because someone protected me. It stopped because I learned to protect myself. At 12, I was adopted, and on the outside, it looked like a new beginning. But inside, I was drowning in questions and confusion. Why didn't my mom come back? I felt abandoned, even by a God that I didn't know. I didn't want to die because I hated life, but because I had never truly lived. But God saw me, even in the silence, he was near, already preparing a future that I couldn't imagine. I learned young that being alone felt safer. Alone meant no abuse, so I isolated, and that survival instinct followed me into adulthood. What I didn't know was that even in my isolation, God was near. His hand was on me, protecting me for a purpose I couldn't see yet. By age 8, I was smoking and stealing alcohol with my brothers. I tried marijuana at the age of 10, and then we had fields behind our house where we would take our stolen goods. That does not make sense. Those fields behind our house was where I held my secrets, my addiction, my pain, my rebellion, and escape. But even there in the dirt and darkness, God was already planting seeds. Shortly after I was adopted, tragedy hit our family. My other foster brother was in a drunk driving accident and spent 2 months in a coma. When he woke, everything had changed, including our family. The trauma shook the family, but it also sparked change. My foster dad, a lifelong alcoholic, got sober and started going to AA. Sometimes I went with him. I remember those rooms were raw, honest, broken people telling the truth. I was just a kid, but I understood their pain, and it felt like my pain. I didn't know it then, but God was planting seeds of healing, recovery, and hope. One of my favorite verses is Jeremiah 29:11. It says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. For years, I have held on to Jeremiah 29:11 without really believing it was for me. My life felt like pain and silence, not hope. I craved love and belonging, so when drugs or alcohol were offered, I usually said yes to speed, ecstasy, weed. I always said yes to alcohol. Not to rebel, but to feel something, or nothing at all. By middle school, I was sneaking out, partying, chasing moments to feel seen, but it always came with a cost. At 14, I went to a party and everything changed. Even then, God wasn't done with my story. At 14, I ended up in a motel with a man, drugs and alcohol were involved, and I was raped. He left me on the side of the road with my clothes torn, my dignity shattered, and I hitchhiked home. just a child navigating a nightmare. I didn't tell anyone, but then I had already learned that speaking up rarely made things better. My experience of foster care told me that silence was safer. So I carried the shame and the trauma alone, and I convinced myself that's just how life would be, and that pain was normal for someone like me. But even then, God never left me. He didn't harm me, he held me. He saw every tear, every silent scream, and whispered, "This is not the end, I still have plans for you." Jeremiah 29:11 wasn't just a verse, it became a lifeline. I never told anyone what really happened, not about the motel, the roadside, or the silence I carried. I had learned young that telling didn't protect me, so I stayed quiet, and I believed the lie that abuse was my normal. But then everything changed in the most unexpected place, Taco Bell. Late into my freshman year, I met Rick, this blue-eyed boy behind the counter. I thought, he's really cute, so I got a job there. We joke and tell our kids that without Taco Bell, they would not exist. Rick became my friend, and for the first time, I was being treated with kindness and respect by the opposite sex. He didn't see me as broken, he actually saw me. And through his love, God began showing me that I was worth loving too. Rick and I started dating when I was 15 and he was 17. I fell fast for this blue-eyed boy with a kind heart and a family that felt like something out of a dream. I wanted to be part of that life. After 10 months, we were in love and decided to get married. My parents said, maybe someday, but we didn't want to wait. We were young and in love and longing for something more, something whole. We called every state looking for one that would let us marry without consent. The answer was always no, but Rick's parents supported us, and to me that felt like God confirming this is part of your story. I asked my parents one last time, and when they said no, I broke loose. I literally ran to Rick's work and said, I just ran away, now what? His family gave me money for a Greyhound bus ticket, and Rick dropped me off in Sacramento. I cried the whole 20-hour ride to Portland, Oregon. I was scared, but I believed God was leading me on a new beginning. When I arrived in Oregon, Rick's sister and grandmother, who were complete strangers, welcomed me with open arms. I stayed with them for 2.5 weeks as a runaway, while Rick faced pressure from my family and the police back home. Eventually I called and said that I wouldn't return unless my parents signed the papers. After some time, they agreed. Excuse me again. We left for Nevada the next morning. I was 16, Rick was 18. Everybody thought we were crazy, but we were just in love. This September, we will be celebrating 35 years of marriage. Looking back, I see God's hand all over it. He used a Taco Bell job, a kind-hearted blue-eyed boy, and a wild leap of faith to start rewriting my story. For we walk by faith, not by sight, 2 Corinthians 5:7. We couldn't see the future, but we knew love had saved us, and it was just the beginning. Because of my past, I was awkward, shy, and guarded. I still am. People often said I looked mad or never smiled. I had a classic RBF. If you don't know what that stands for, just ask the person next to you. But that face was my armor. I learned early that showing emotion led to pain. I carried deep shame and never fully processed the trauma that I'd lived through. I shared bits with Rick, but never the full weight of it. I didn't want him to see me as broken, but he never did. He's always loved me with gentleness and respect. Him and my foster dad were the first men that I ever truly trusted or loved. At 18, Rick and my dad found my birth mom. We were reunited and built a beautiful relationship. It was short but meaningful. She passed away at the age of 46 from liver cancer. We only had 11 years together, but I'm so thankful God gave us that time. Even through loss, His grace carried me. Before my mom passed, she told me things I had never known. She had fought to get me back, but her life had spiraled. She became a bank robber, still a prostitute and a drug dealer, and she was running from state to state, trying to survive and fund a legal battle that she couldn't win. Eventually, she went to prison. That's when I finally understood. My mom didn't give up on me, she just lost the fight. But in prison, everything changed. She got clean, finished school, and started rebuilding her life. When my little brother AJ was born, she stayed sober and gave him what she couldn't give me: stability, love, and a safe home. When she died of liver cancer, AJ was just 14. Rick and I stepped into the fight for custody, and we went up against the court system and his absent father, and we won. I made a promise to her that I'd make sure AJ had a chance at a good life, and I kept that promise. Today, he's a husband, a father, and a man she would be proud of. For a long time, I wrestled with jealousy. AJ got the best of her, and I got the broken version. But God softened my heart and helped me see the beauty in her redemption. Her healing gave my brother a future, and through it all, I've seen God take the most broken stories and make them beautiful. I didn't drink again until my mid-20s, after our son was born. At first, it felt harmless, just casual drink with friends. Rick was a true normie, someone that could stop at just one. I never understood that. Why would you stop at just one? I wanted all the drinks. Plus like 10 more. For about 10 years, I kept my drinking mostly under control, at least on the surface, but underneath, the obsession had already taken root. I snuck drinks, I drank more than I admitted, and I used alcohol to escape the pain I never processed. When we moved to Arizona 17 years ago, everything began to spiral. I was isolated, working from home, and though our daughter Izzy was a beautiful surprise, I quietly unraveled. Postpartum depression layered over years of buried trauma. I started drinking more and always in secret. I became a true closet drinker. I had bottles hidden in closets, in purses, shoes, backyard bushes. If there was a space to stash it, I used it. Hiding had always been my way of surviving, but God saw through it all. Even in the darkness, he was preparing a way into the light. I lived in constant fear of being found out, but hiding had always been second nature for me. I'd been hiding since childhood, my pain, my voice, and my truth. So hiding alcohol felt normal, and it felt safe. But I wasn't safe. I was slowly destroying myself, trapped in shame, secrecy, and self-medicating. I never dealt with the wounds of my past. I didn't know how to talk about what was happening inside me. I'm not very good at reading, guys. Alcohol quieted the noise until it didn't. Eventually, it stopped helping and started hurting. Still, I wasn't ready to let go, so I kept drinking and I kept pretending and I kept surviving. Until God stepped in and gently began pulling me out of the spiral and into healing. But I wasn't sick, I wasn't safe, I was slowly destroying myself. I already read that part. Sorry, guys. I never faced the wounds of my past. I already read that part too. Okay, skip all that. 2014, after a routine procedure, I went into AFib and test revealed that I had a serious heart condition. I was told I needed open heart surgery. You'd think that would have been my wake-up call, but it wasn't. The moment I came home from the hospital, I picked up a drink. No pause, no surrender. The obsession had me, and I wasn't ready to let God have me yet. A year and a half after my first surgery in 2016, I had a stroke. It was terrifying, and it led to another open heart surgery. So 2 open heart surgeries and a stroke within a year and a half. Another chance to stop, another chance to surrender. But all I could think about was getting home so I could drink. That's the insanity of addiction. Even after staring death in the face, I kept chasing numbness. I wasn't just battling alcohol. I was battling trauma, pain, and the lie that isolation was safety. During this time, Rick started going to a program called Celebrate Recovery. He was finding hope, healing, and gently inviting me to come, but I wasn't ready, not yet. God was still working, but I hadn't said yes. That's not my thing, I'd say. I don't need that. I'd rather drink alone than admit I was broken. Rick kept going to Celebrate Recovery, and I kept drinking. Isolation felt safer than honesty. Then 9 years ago, Rick came home with an Alcoholics Anonymous big book from an Al-Anon meeting. I was shocked. Al-Anon? Who does he know that's an alcoholic? I didn't realize he was going for me. At first, I pushed the book aside, but God was working gently, persistently. After a few days, I picked it up, and then I looked up a meeting. That was the beginning of everything changing. In those rooms, I found something I hadn't felt in years: connection and belonging, no judgment, just people who understood, people who were like me. It reminded me of sitting in the AA meetings with my dad years earlier. I had felt safe there. And now here I was again, full circle, but this time it wasn't for someone else, it was for me. And it was the beginning of a new life. After a few months in AA, I gave Celebrate Recovery a try. They had a group for addictive behaviors, so I started showing up. Slowly I made friends, and slowly I began to open up. Then God nudged me to join a step study. I was scared, but I said yes. That's when everything started to shift. Through that study, I learned about real forgiveness. God softened my heart and showed me that I didn't need alcohol to be loved. I was already loved by Him, and my past no longer had the final word. I recently lost a dear friend from that very first step study. We became very close and shared similar backgrounds of mental health struggles. Hold on, I need my goat.
Yeah.
This loss is different. I've struggled with my own mental health as far back as I can remember. Long before I knew the words for it, depression, trauma, anxiety, I felt it. That deep ache, that exhaustion, that isolation. But mental illness is ruthless. It wears you down and it lies to you. And even warriors like my friend got tired of fighting. I wish I could have held her for a little bit longer. And reminded her more often that she was not alone. If you hear this and you're struggling, please know that you're not a burden. You're not too much. You're needed and wanted and deeply loved. Please reach out and please hold on. Recovery isn't a straight line. In 2018, after all this progress, I relapsed again. I landed in the hospital, broken and ashamed. What I didn't know then was how close I came to losing everything. I recently learned that Rick had been ready to leave. After hearing how high my alcohol level was, he walked out. My friends had to pick me up. Thanks, Jen. He was done watching me choose the bottle over our family. He had a plan to take Izzy and go. I was too deep in denial to see it. I didn't just lose control, I lost clarity. That could have been the end, but by the grace of God, it wasn't. It became the beginning, a slow rock bottom, but the place where real healing begins. Through AA and Celebrate Recovery, I began to identify my hurts, hang-ups, and habits, and with that came freedom. I found truth tellers, grace givers, and lifelong friends. I'm forever grateful to Rick for never giving up on me. Today our marriage has been restored, rooted in recovery, and anchored in Christ. Although I had called myself a Christian for years, it wasn't until recovery that I truly met God. I stopped just asking Him to take the pain and started thanking Him for how He was using it. I've stumbled, slipped, and started over so many times, but what changed me wasn't some dramatic rock bottom. It was a quiet moment in my closet, that same place I used to drink when I finally cried out, "God, please take this from me." And this time I meant it. That was almost 6 years ago. September 11th, 2025, God willing, I'll celebrate 6 years. Since that day, God has used every scar, every slip, and every setback for His glory. I've completed 6 step studies, 2 of them leading other women in their recovery. I stay active in CR and AA, and I'm a proud member of Broken Chains, a biker fellowship transformed by Jesus. It only took me 30 years of marriage to say yes to Rick getting a motorcycle. Now he has 2. Today I live fully awake. I lead Bible studies, volunteer, and speak when asked, even though I'm someone who hates public speaking. Like, this is torture, you guys, you don't even know. But I do it. I got my goat Billy here. 6 years ago, I begged God to take the desire to drink. And he did, and he said, share the story I gave you. So I do. I've been a guest on 3 of my favorite podcasts, interviewed on sober platforms, and continue saying yes whenever doors open. Now I know my past is just part of my story. It's not my identity. God has restored more than my marriage. He's restored my soul. I found community, courage, and connection. I'm learning healthy boundaries, how to love others, and how to love myself. So recovery is now part of my everyday life. I wake up with purpose, I stay grounded in faith, and I keep showing up. I still stumble, but now I have tools. I grow and I stay connected, and I don't do it alone. To the newcomer, I encourage you to hang on, let the people in, accept the help, and know that you are worth it. You are not your trauma and not your addiction. You're not your past. And as we say in AA, it works if you work it, and you're worth it. I'll leave you with these lyrics from Mended by Matthew West. When you see wounded, I see mended. When you see nothing but damaged goods, I see something good in the making. I'm not finished yet. When you see wounded, I see mended. Thank you for letting me share, and thank you, Jesus, for never letting me go.